Hi, I'm Chef Dani, and today with Elite Cuisine, we're doing a Chef's Presents, and I'm going to be making for you a couple of pork tenderloins. We're going to roast them and serve them with two different sauces. The first sauce is a bacon jam. We're going to serve that with some cheesy grits and delicious garlic green beans. And the second sauce is a blueberry basil sauce, really delicious for winter or summer. I know you hear fruit and you think summertime, but this sauce packs a little bit of punch and can be great for winter as well. Let's get started. I've got a skillet getting hot. Always want to start cooking with a warm skillet. And for me, I'm going to put my oil right on the protein instead of in the pan. The reason for that is you have just loose oil here in your pan. It gives it more of an opportunity to just smoke and burn. I'm going to be seasoning these pork tenderloins liberally with salt and pepper and just a little garlic powder. A lot of this seasoning will knock off in the skillet, so it's okay to be extra liberal. We tend to do a lot of pork butts or pork loins, and those cuts of meat are delicious, but they're larger, so they take a long time to cook. With a pork tenderloin, much like a pork chop, you could have it every night for dinner if you wanted to. And I think that pork is just a really versatile cut of meat. It's very lean, which is different than beef. Beef can tend to be fatty, and chicken can sometimes be bland. I love pork. A lot of flavor and a lot of different things that you can do with it. So you're going to sear this for a good 3 or 4 minutes on each side. All you really want to do is get a little bit of color on each side, and then we're going to put it on a lined baking sheet on top of a cooking rack and put it in the oven. It's going to go in the oven on 350 for about 15 to 20 minutes. You're going to take it out when the temperature reaches 150 and let it rest for at least 10 minutes. You really want all of those juices to return back. Nice little color right there. That extra seasoning, oh, it smells so good already. So if you cut your meat too soon after it comes out of the oven, you'll lose all the moisture that you're working right now to keep locked in there. So we're building a crust on this pork in order to keep all that flavor inside when it goes into the oven. I smell nothing but garlic right now. It smells delicious. Now that our pork tenderloins are in the oven working hard, we are going to start on our two sauces. So the first sauce we're going to make is a bacon jam. Again, get your skillet your pot a little warm. Go down with a little olive oil. Let that warm up for a minute. All right, so I think our skillet is warm. We're going to go ahead and go in with this 1 pound of bacon. Want to get your bacon covered in the olive oil that you put in the pan, or whatever oil you're using. Vegetable oil would be just as well. Let that loosen up a little bit, and then we're going to go right in with 1 cup of yellow onions. If you just had white onions on hand instead of yellow, that would work just as well. And you're gonna saute this at a good medium high for at least 10 minutes. We're looking to get some color on the onions and on the bacon. We want a deep brown color on the onions and bacon without burning it. So this is the longest part of this sauce. The other ingredients that we'll be using for this sauce today are brown sugar, a little fresh thyme, coffee, which I think is the interesting ingredient for a bacon jam, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar. A lot of times when you hear bacon jam, you may think something spreadable that's going to go on top of like a cream cheese bagel and some bacon jam, get really new age with it. This is meant for a savory dish, and really what makes it a jam component is the sugar. And the coffee, which is interesting to me, just adds a depth of flavor. This goes really well with a roasted pork tenderloin, because what goes better with pork than pork, right? This would also be good with chicken or with a steak instead of onions and mushrooms. You could do a little bacon jam on your steak. That would be fantastic. You're adding in the brown sugar. That's really adding the sweetness, the jam factor, right? Because up until this point, it's just a lot of protein and fat and aromatics. That brown sugar is adding that kick of sweetness. The thyme, we tossed that in there and gave it a good couple stirs. The thyme that fresh thyme almost immediately woke this room up. It really brightens and livens up the dish. The coffee brings the whole thing back down to earth and brings it all together. And so after you get the coffee in there, you're stirring to make sure everything's incorporated very well. A little bit of salt and pepper. What you're looking for now is for all that coffee to cook off. You want all the liquid to absorb into the ingredients that you've already been sauteing. It's really coming together. So the sauteing of the bacon and the onion did take quite a good solid 10 minutes, but if you can spend 10 minutes on making a pot of pasta, it's over with just as quick as that. And in my opinion, this is much tastier than a 10-minute box of pasta. So once all of that liquid is absorbed, the last step is to add a couple of tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And this just gives it, after you incorporate that, a couple little stirs, you're going to take it right off the heat. You don't want to cook the apple cider vinegar completely away. You want that to stay. Next, we're making blueberry basil sauce. This sauce is one of my favorites, and I always get asked, when are you going to make that again? If you're anything like me, I'm sure you have those in your family that say, fruit doesn't go with protein. This sauce is here to prove that different. It has so many savory qualities, and it packs a little bit of a spice too. Fruit is really an afterthought. So you're getting a super fruit in with your entree, and no one knows except that blueberry is in the title. So let's make some blueberry basil sauce. We're going to start with a little oil on the pan. Have that warm. I have one diced shallot here. If you don't have a shallot, any onion would be just fine. Shallots are just a little bit more mild, although this one did make me tear up a lot when I was cutting it for being such a mild onion. So we just want to get these a little softened. Next, we're going to add a tablespoon of garlic and a teaspoon of red chili flake. Now, if you are a big sriracha fan, and I know a lot of people are, you could do sriracha instead. And if you like a little more heat, maybe go with 2 teaspoons instead of 1. So we are just sweating these vegetables and spices until they get a little translucent. Go ahead and hit this with some salt and pepper. These have started to soften up, so we are going to add our balsamic vinegar. This is a half a cup of balsamic vinegar. Now, really the balsamic vinegar is the star of the sauce, but we couldn't call it balsamic blueberry basil sauce. That's just too many B's. You want to bring this to a good simmer and let it reduce down by about half. So when you put it in the pan, kind of mark the spot, right, and see it reduce down, or know that you've got a half a cup in there, and so you'll want about a 1/4 cup to be left before you move forward. This process takes about 6 to 8 minutes. While this is reducing down, we do want to add 1 tablespoon of honey. Of course, local is better. It's going to help you with your allergies. Now you're not only having a super fruit, but you're helping yourself out a little more. This is just going to help this thicken as it reduces. All right, as you can see, this has reduced down quite a bit. And so now, the last simple steps, a half a cup of beef broth and a half a cup of fresh blueberries. Now, if you don't have fresh blueberries and you have dehydrated blueberries, you could certainly use those as well. I know I always keep some dehydrated blueberries around for salads. Either would work just as well. So we're going to bring this to a simmer and let it really get to bubbling. Once those blueberries explode, we're calling it done. This sauce is not going to be really thick like a gravy. It's a little bit more of a loose sauce, but it has so much flavor. I'm so excited for you to try it. Ooh, they're busting open. So we're going to stop this right here. We want there to be a little resemblance of a blueberry left by the time we plate this. So if you keep cooking past the time when those start to burst, they'll just disappear. So our pork tenderloins are out of the oven, cooling, letting all those juices get back in the right places. And I wanted to show you how to chop a little basil. So what I've done here is stacked the leaves on top of each other. You give it a little roll. You want to find the bigger leaves. That way it's a little easier. And then it's really easy to just chop right down through. Call this chiffonade. And then your little garnish is little pretty ribbons. When you're making a margarita pizza, it's common when the pizza comes out of the oven to use torn basil pieces. For something like this, you want it to be able to sprinkle your basil over the plate. Makes nice little ribbons instead of just torn chunks. Totally up to you, but in case you need a trick to put in your hat, there you go. So in just 20 minutes, we were able to roast 2 pork tenderloins. That's pretty quick for a weekend or a weekday meal. Look how juicy those look. So one thing that I didn't mention to you when we were preparing these to go onto the tray and go into the oven, if for some reason you do not have a wire rack for your baking tray, or maybe you just don't want to use your wire rack on a protein, what you can do instead of using a wire rack is have a few onions or grab a few stalks of celery and throw those down in your pan and lay your pork tenderloin on top of those. You're really looking to make sure the heat gets all the way around the pork. So these are going to be delicious. My mouth is watering. All right. Right. Bacon jam to go right with this. Now, the chef who taught me this recipe loves to plant it right on top, but I'm working with a little bit of a triangle here with my pork tenderloin, so I think it'll roll everywhere else. So I'm just going to throw it on the side today. And how beautiful is that? I wish you were here to smell it. Excellent. Now again, remember this blueberry basil sauce is going to be a little thin, but it's so delicious. Lots of flavor. And so the basil comes in right at the end. You want to keep it really fresh. And that's really going to wake up those flavors. They're really deep and bold flavors. And just the way the thyme did in the bacon jam, it really brightened those earthy flavors up. The basil is just going to make this alive. So delicious. I really enjoyed making roasted pork tenderloin with 2 different sauces with you today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did and that you impressed whoever's lucky enough to be a guest at your table. I'll see you next time on Chef Presents.